A couple of years ago, I was sort of sitting there thinking I was growing grass. Thought I was doing a pretty good job at it. It was growing, the sheep were doing all right, but I wanted to lift my stocking rate, and I was trying to work out what I could do better. So it was the utilisation, grazing management and deferment of pastures I found to be my issue, and I did a course a little while ago, which worked heavily on the strict rules of heavy rotational grazing, that pretty much what's done in the dairy industry on leaf emergent rate, residues left behind. I'm trying to remember all the rules of what they say, but I suppose any rotation is good. In my previous rotation, if I shifted a mob of sheep, I class that as a rotation. So now I'm actually looking and starting to count leaf emergent rates and shifting sheep. So last year I didn't get a full rotational system practice very well because I played by the DPERB rule book on foot rot, and you're not meant to shift sheep, you're not meant to do this, don't do this, don't do that. We're still in foot rot, so this year I've sort of thrown the rule book out and I'm doing what I think is best for my sheep. So what I'm trying to work out is how far to push it with sheep. It's a very easy system with dairy because you're shifting your cows twice a day, really, getting them in and out to milk. So this year I'm playing, I've got, I think it's 4 setups. I've got this, the photos here is actually on the new lease block, which is being set up as a strict rule. It's dry sheep, it's weathers, strict rules, shifting in when I get the right leaf emergent rate, taking him out at the right time. So it's actually very strict rules on shifting. I have now, there's a mob of I've got a mob of twinning ewes that are rotating on relatively strict conditions, and they'll be rotated up until lambing, when they'll get split into their lambing mobs, and then as soon as they finish lambing, they'll all get boxed back up again and start rotating again. And then there's another 2 mobs going. There's a mob of ewes that's haphazardly at the other end of the farm, sort of going, oh, there's a green pick here today, we'll shift them over there every 3 or 4. They're just going around cleaning up, because I've got, yeah, they're still on sup feed. And then I've just got a couple of paddocks I've set stocked just to see the differences in grass levels, what it all looks like in another 4 or 5 weeks. But the fact is, those twinning ewes, they're on their 2nd lap of their rotation, and I stopped hand feeding those a week ago. So I've managed to I've got photos of their grass coming up. But this was just to show 5 weeks post-seeding is the left-hand one. That's what the sheep went in on. This was a bit too big a paddock, so they actually end up being in there for 7 days. There's 1,200 wethers on this area. So the middle one is where I grazed it down to, and that's the same spot 3 days later with the regrowth that I got. If it wasn't for this wind, this wind and rain the last few days, I should have been out there with the boom spray doing broadleaf, and I was going to give it a little touch up of nitrogen. This is actually back on the home farm where I've got my twinning ewes on a set strict rotation. So that's ryegrass and clover, 15 days post-graze. They were actually being supplemented at the time, but 150 grams of barley a day. But now they're out of it. They're due to lamb in July, and they're actually running around on pure grass. That was the paddock 3 days post-grazing. A lot of clover dominancy at this end of the farm. That was trying to show...
Matt, can we go back to your weather grazing photos?
Mm-hmm.
What decisions or what visual cues are you using to decide when to stop, when to pull them out of an area? So like the middle one, what was your decision to move them on? What were you looking for?
Residuals. It's meant to be, they talk 4 to 5 centimetres, but sheep, I find it very hard to try and keep them that high off the ground. So it did get overgrazed a little bit. was holding them in there a bit longer. It was watching what the sheep were doing. First 3 or 4 days they were grazing and sleeping, but the last day I decided when I was going to pull them out, they were doing a lot of walking. They were just looking for feed, so I knew there wasn't enough there, and they'd probably trampled quite a bit of grass. But yeah, you're looking for that, and they talk only 3 or 4 days maximum grazing in one paddock or in one area, because then it starts after 3 days, the leaves start to grow again. I think you see in the next photo, after 3 days, the amount. So if you're in there for 6 days, you've chewed off 2 lots of grass. So it's actually, yeah, I use the visual, like leaving enough residue behind so you're not damaging the growing point, and watching what the sheep are doing.
So what's the residue there? What's the residue in that centre photo? And what do you think the prospects are for us as rotational grazers to monitor the sheep themselves? What do you think we need in terms of tools?
I wonder how to go with those, like those, I suppose this is where part of it, using tags for either, I think they're playing with those Fitbit tags. If all of a sudden the sheep are spending 18 hours a day grazing instead of 10 hours a day grazing, or they're working, well, I suppose is there a difference? Are they walking 20 hours a day or whatever it is, whether they're in the far left in the good grass or the well grazed grass when they're ready to shift? Are they actually walking differently? There's cues the sheep would be probably trying to tell you that they're ready for a shift.
And you think that would be a useful addition to this technique, to have some sort of objective measurement of when the sheep are ready to move?
There might be other electronic stuff that we can monitor from a distance, so I don't have to drive out the paddock. I can see what they're doing on a computer screen.
Okay, so presumably these wethers are also, you're aiming to have them either maintain or just grow slowly. What if they were crossbred lambs and you wanted them to grow at 200 grams a day? Would it be useful to have a tool that helped you to determine the appropriate residual for that scenario?
There would be systems out there it could be set up that you could have it like, if you had, depending on the way the paddocks are set up, if you had a walkover scales that the lambs were trained to, and you were monitoring, and somehow they have to go over it every day for water, but the problem is in this sort of level, you're not going to probably get them walking over a platform for water, but you could have them set up and all of a sudden, hang on, if you see their growth rates are slowing, then a gate gets opened up and they go to the fresh paddock, or I don't know. There could be systems in place like that, I suppose, if that's what you're thinking.
I'm just asking the question. There is no system that I'm aware of, but there's lots of questions being asked of us and of research groups about trying to find tools to achieve different production targets in a rotational grazing system.
I think there are. I suppose
I think there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, I think the easiest thing, I suppose, they've worked out this system very well with dairy cows, because twice a day they're monitoring their production, so they know what's happening. And I suppose that's where a lot of the rules have come from. I suppose it's refining it with sheep and how to monitor without putting them over a milk stand. It'll be I'm still trying to get my head around it. The hardest part is going to be the lambing, trying to shut. I don't want to rotate while I'm lambing. That's why everything will sort of get spread out and then box back up again with everything else. And trying to work paddock sizes, and I think I've just got to get the idea into my head that I might have to start putting some electric fences in to split a few of the bigger paddocks up to get it right. But just playing with a couple of mobs this year to see what I can achieve and how much more grass I can achieve. The interesting part hopefully it'll become a problem in the spring, that I'll have a lot of surplus in the paddocks that then I will it's either then start blowing out or I might have to even seriously consider going back to conserving some grass in a bag.
Matt, do you think you've, my observation is that you're having a bit of an attitude change. From being a sheep farmer to being a grass grower, and, a level of professionalism that sort of comes with that, or you're taking this a lot more seriously, or you're thinking about it a lot more than you previously have anyway. Do you think there is a certain attitude that you've changed your attitude to it?
Yeah, it's probably just opened up and looked at another way, because I got to a point where, okay, we're doing a certain stocking rate. I want to get bigger. I want to run more sheep. There's more money to be made, or hopefully more money to be made. How am I going to get better, or what can I do better? You can grow grass. I think growing grass isn't that hard. It's the utilisation of the grass. I can grow 13 tonne of dry matter a year, but am I only using 6 tonne of that dry? It's my utilisation of that grass. And I might get to a point in the next 12, 18 months and go, I'm out there 3 days a week shifting fences and shifting sheep, and I'm actually not making any more money, or I should be going crayfishing or doing something else than shifting sheep, and let's just go back to 15 DSE and just cruise along. Once we get into it, is to see what it's actually costing me time-wise and money-wise. Am I making any more money by pushing that stocking rate out that little bit extra?
You should get a good handle on that, Matt, particularly with the rotations you're doing with the twin ewes at the moment, and how much extra feed that's likely to give you going into the winter, which will potentially solve your lambing conundrum. So if you have built that winter feed wedge, you don't really have any issues dropping back to a set stock scenario when there's plenty of feed on the ground. Which will certainly help with even lamb survival if ewes don't have to walk as far.
Yeah, well, that's what I suppose.
To protect them.
Yeah, well, that's what it's all, I suppose. Part of the push is it's been try and get my 2 tonne of foo in my twinning paddocks and 1,200 foo in my single paddocks. And in the past, I've sort of haphazardly rotated to do that and shifted sheep around a bit, okay, but no science to it, no nothing. It's just chuck them here, chuck them there. But now it's, just trying a different way, I suppose.
So really what it comes down to is, and like Ed said, it's that change of attitude from being completely focused on the livestock to having more focused on what's going to help the grass or the pasture grow to its maximum potential. And essentially, after fertility and rainfall are taken care of, it's the stocking rate that you apply for a certain period of time, and not allowing that grass to be regrazed to improve that utilisation.
Matt, just picking up on another comment that Sam made on the chat, he talked about pastures from space and having the data from that input into your rotational grazing management. What do you think pastures from space needs to give you that it doesn't already that would make it useful?
Pastures from space?
Loaded question, because it's probably not useful enough for a 3 or 4 day grazing break at the moment.
No, but where pastures from space 2 years ago I found good it was actually relatively up to date. It was within 7 days, and the historical fact that I could go back 14 years and pick up rainfall data to match what was going on. I actually had a look on this morning to see the latest growth rates. What are we today? The 5th of May, and the last lot of data I can get is about the 21st of April. So at the moment, it is far too slow. It's gone backwards. We need more lifetime data, faster data, even if it's 3 or 4 days. It's probably not I'm not using it to sit there and go, oh, that paddock now has got this much growth rate, this much leaf emergence, I've got to go and shift the sheep. I'll do that visually. I just like the idea of using that as a backup to say, yes, I reckon there's X foo, or this is what the growth is doing. Hang on, I've got some science or something out there that's helping me back up my decisions. But I think it works, but it's far too slow and unreliable at the moment. I've got sections of the farm that for some reason the satellite doesn't go. I've never picked up a growth rate on that section of the farm.
Thanks, Matt. That was good to pause in that area. I think there's lots of potential for improved productivity with more intensive grazing management, and it's also an area of personal interest to me too. So sorry about that, guys.
So yes, just another photo of grass. Left-hand side was 6 weeks post-break. It was grazed. I still had sheep on the paddock for 2 weeks after the actual break of the season, 4 weeks deferment, and the sheep were just in there on the weekend grazing it for the first time. I was just trying to show the residuals. It took me 6 days to get that paddock chewed down enough. I would have liked to chew down a bit more. So that's either I've got to throw more sheep into that rotation or split the paddock in half to try and get my 3 or 4 days maximum grazing pressure.
Need more witcher ryegrass too, mate.
Witcher? No, don't use witcher. But no, that paddock that end of the farm does run a lot of very high levels of clover, not a lot of ryegrass. I've probably had it stocked for too long and not let good seed set. So that's what I'm trying to do with the rotation up there in the spring, is actually let some of those paddocks get away a bit and self-seed some ryegrass down. This was just a quick little photo I found the other day in my early sown oats. These were Carola, and that there is oats running up to head. That there in the boot is a head full of oats about to burst out, which I could probably go and harvest in 6 weeks. That might be a bit wet. But this year, high soil temp, we're still running 19 degrees plus and warm days. My oats, they will decide to start running up. But they're being grazed at the moment, so hopefully the tillers will give me another couple of grazings. But going to have to probably go and look at some of the actual proper forage oats instead of just a straight seed oat. But that's what was there to grab this year.
So it's a change in plant type there, Matt, looking for something that has a vernalisation requirement. So it'll have to accumulate so much cold weather before it'll go reproductive. So these oats and everything else we tend to grow as a spring variety as opposed to a true winter type.
Yeah, I've always just, after this year, these were clean seed oats I actually bought. Generally, it's actually my cereals that I chuck in my pastures is actually whatever's in the silo at the time. So yeah, they're always generally your spring. So it's just whatever's cheap in the silo. But yeah, I'm going to have to probably look at this if I'm going to start seeding and chasing early cereal growth with a bit of moisture in the very early stages of autumn. Yeah,
and this year you may have sown, on average earlier than you would most other years too.
Yeah, it was mid-March, I think, when we had that big break in rain.